Man is the weakest auxiliary profession in the world, but he is decisive and ruthless. But he is decisive and never loses. He can only stand behind the team. While giving orders, he uses words to cast trendy magic on his teammates. Although the existence of the male lead will undoubtedly greatly enhance the strength of the entire team, he is still not satisfied. Back in the day, his hometown was suddenly covered by a 12th level abyss. Facing the sudden demon king and demons, his grandfather, who had been living in seclusion for years, he relied on his own strength. He fought against the entire demon army, but the male lead could only cowardly hide in the basement and cry. When the smoke cleared, who in his youth, the strongest man who soloed the 13th level abyss, only had half of his body left. This is the final fate of all explorers. Since you choose to live by fighting, it means living next to the god of death. This is the last thing Grandpa can teach the male lead. Even so, the male lead still doesn't plan to give up his dream. He swore in front of his grandfather's remains he would surpass his grandfather and become the strongest explorer in the world. But 2 years have passed. The male lead is still struggling in a C-class team because his profession is the so-called weakest talker. So in the battle, he can only give orders from behind. With his amazing command ability, the male lead's team, they were assigned a mission that only B-level teams can only receive quests. Their target is a monster called the Superior Vampire Queen. Although this monster cannot use magic, but it has the ability to reproduce indefinitely. So according to the male lead's plan, they need to eliminate the vampire's minions first, and then destroy its body in one fell swoop. In this way, to ensure the success of this mission. However, in the face of the male lead's caution, the warrior in the team is dismissive. In his eyes, the useless male lead can only talk big, is just a parasite that sucks the blood of his teammates. Facing the warrior's ridicule, the male lead has long been accustomed to it. After all, the profession of sorcerer focuses on support. Its combat power is pitifully weak. So it's not surprising that people around him always look down on him. However, before the male lead could refute, the vampire queen, who had been waiting in the dark, suddenly sprayed a puff of poisonous smoke from above. Seeing the male lead instantly being enveloped by the smoke, the other teammates wanted to help, but they were helpless without the leader's command and support. At this time, they couldn't even exert half of their combat power. Seeing this, the warrior became more and more annoyed. He immediately shouted loudly, asking the useless male lead to think of a way. Hearing this, the protagonist's grandfather's death flashed before his eyes. The tactical deployment can increase the team's ability by 25%, and the protagonist's excellent ingenuity can give the team the most correct instructions, which allowed his teammates to avoid area attacks. Then he continued to cast high morale, which increased the team's physical and magic power, increasing by another 25%. Then the male lead commanded the healer to set up a shield, and the other two launched another attack. With the command and buff of the male lead, the team gradually gained the upper hand. Just when the male lead thought he was winning, but unexpectedly, there were lower-level vampires in the periphery. The male protagonist quickly applied a mental solution. This magic will normalize the target's mind and inspire their fighting spirit. Then the male protagonist set the time and planned to solve the dependence by himself, while the others focused on attacking the main body. Then the male protagonist stood alone. He directly roared like a wolf, paralyzing all the vassals. Then, he took out a magic gun. This is the magician's, the only weapon that can be used against demons. With the non-Jewish exquisite calculation ability, their team completed the mission safely. It turns out that the world where the male lead lives has abyss. Whenever the concentration of magic speed in the air is too high, the abyss will be connected to the demon world. The deeper the link is, the stronger the demons that appear in the world. Because of that tragedy, made the male protagonist determined to become an invincible explorer. In the next 2 years, the male protagonist also successfully obtained the explorer qualification and met his current partners in the imperial capital. They are Varda, who is responsible for the front row warrior, Starnia, and Royd, a swordsman and captain, And now the male protagonist needs to accumulate experience. This is his first step towards his ambition, and the B-level mission they completed this time, with a reward of 5 million Fei. But the male lead thinks it's a pity. After all, if he had been more aggressive when accepting the mission, the reward might have been another 500,000 Fei. But the stubborn Vault doesn't care about this. Instead, he thinks the male lead cares too much about money, which would affect the reputation of the team. The two also quarreled over this matter. While drunk, Vault also said his true feelings. He looked down on the male lead, who always gave orders from behind, and thought others were fighting for their lives, while the male lead only hides in the safe zone. But the male lead didn't care too much. After forming the team for a year, he had already noticed his teammates' thoughts. However, the male lead never imagined that this stubborn Valdar was the only one who didn't betray him. Just as they were about to fight, Captain Royd stopped them in time. They went outside to distribute the task rewards. After deducting the team's operating expenses and the handling fee to the battle corps, each person only got 250,000 Fei. They risked their lives, but most of the reward was divided, which made the healer Dania a little frustrated. Lloyd reassured the team that funds were increasing. They could still make money on similar tasks next time. However, the male protagonist didn't agree with this. After all, tasks with a 5 million reward aren't available at all times. Because they are not a war group, they can only take on some difficult commissions that others don't want. And they will also be charged a brokerage fee. Then the male lead asked how much money the team had left. Lloyd said that with this payment, there are 12.8 million Fei left. Hearing this amount, the male lead expressed his thoughts, that he would use the money to create a guild, to create a legion, besides having to pay 20 million Fei in registration fee. He also needs to rent a house that can be used as a stronghold. In response, the male lead said he would pay for the remaining 7 million. As for the house, he has someone to sell, so he can get it at a low price. After all, the male lead's goal is to become the strongest explorer beyond the immortal ghost. Instead of standing still now, continue to undertake the jobs that others don't want. It's better to create a war group earlier, and then directly take tasks from the country. The country also hopes more citizens will become explorers. With enough potential and good looks, they will definitely be advertised as role models by the country. At that time, not only will they get high-level tasks, the country might even give them a sponsorship. For the male lead's plan, Dania still has some concerns, but the warrior Vault stood by the male lead. The remaining is the attitude of the captain. The male lead said that he had already prepared to run the Warband in advance, and he has made up his mind. If the captain doesn't agree, he would quit the team with his share of funds. Seeing that things had come to this, the captain had to agree to the male lead's request. But they had just finished the battle, and still very tired. He hoped to wait until the day after tomorrow to study the details of creating a war group. The male lead didn't think much about it, and he agreed directly and happily. The next day, Valda suddenly panicked and found the male lead. Oh, how to take revenge on the teammate who betrayed him. Just use magic to control the couple, and then sell them to slave traders in a bundle. This can perfectly make up for his losses. But before that, he needs to beat them up hard, to relieve the anger in his heart. It turned out that not long ago, the male protagonist learned from the warrior, learned that the captain had failed in an investment, and absconded with the money. But his first reaction was not anger. He couldn't help laughing out loud. After all, when he thought of the sanctimonious captain would do such a thing, he couldn't help laughing. Sure enough, as people live longer, you will encounter all kinds of things. Valda couldn't swallow this, just as he decided to search every corner of the world. To beat the couple, the male lead told him not to worry. Would just beating them up make him feel better? As long as the money can't be recovered, then everything is in vain. The other party should be very clear about this. So they planned this gorgeous elopement. And with just the two of them, even if they find the other two, they can't guarantee to win. But just when Vault thought the male lead would swallow it, the male lead gave him a warning. Facing the person who betrayed him, he would never show mercy. After all, his motto is to repay 1,000-fold. Soon the two arrived at An adventurer's tavern. The first thing they did. He shouted that he had a commission. He can help him capture his runaway teammate alive. He would be rewarded with 2 million fei. Hearing this, everyone in the tavern was excited. Faced with this generous bounty, a powerful team quickly accepted it. However, he didn't know where the two were fleeing to. The male lead is not clear. That the two must have left the imperial capital last night. And they moved on foot. After all, there were no carriages at that time. In short, after learning that they didn't run far, the first team decisively accepted it. This also caused a chain reaction. When the male protagonist came to his senses, the tavern was almost empty. But at this time, an unexpected person came to the hero. He said he knew the target's whereabouts, because he happened to pass by them yesterday, but due to his lack of strength, so he hoped to get the hero's help. It's okay if the reward is a little lower. As soon as he said this, the male lead directly offered half price, 1 million, which was far from the 150,000 he expected. The man was sure, no matter how he bargained, it would always be 1 million. Otherwise, it can be considered that they didn't talk. Because from his clothes, the male lead could tell that he was always short of money, and he had no other choice. As expected, Shouho was persuaded by the male lead. However, before departure, the man said he had something to deal with, asking Shouho and Warda to wait at the city gate. Meanwhile, the runaway couple just arrived at a village and prepared to rest for a night. During this period, the red-haired man comforted the yellow-haired man. However, before he could finish speaking, after controlling the two, Valda angrily questioned the red-haired man, why he betrayed them. Seeing that, Hongmao tried to use the lie of investment failure. The male protagonist immediately exposed his lie. The so-called investment failure didn't exist. Hongmao actually owed a loan shark because of gambling. Otherwise, the reward for defeating the vampire wouldn't be spent so quickly. Seeing the truth exposed, Hongmao simply stopped pretending. He shouted at the male lead. The two of them didn't understand how much pressure he had as the captain. What's wrong with taking some money for entertainment? But the male lead, what right does a slacking support have to question him? Everyone present didn't expect that. The usually honest and simple male lead would have such a ruthless side. Especially Valda felt it deeply. He usually quarreled with the male lead a lot. At that time, the male lead didn't even dare to fart. But now it was completely different. At this time, the yellow-haired man still wanted to plead for the red-haired man. Hearing this, the male lead said, as long as you take his place and get beaten. After all, he is a feminist. And he wouldn't show mercy just because she was a girl. He would show mercy. Oh, my only Sunny Gamble will stay down up. The male lead's move was really shocking, which directly exposed the yellow-haired's true colors. But it was too late when the yellow-haired reacted. He scolded the male lead. Do you know what you've done? Knowing that using mental interference skills privately can land you in jail. However, the male lead didn't care at all. After all, the target he used, but a criminal who embezzled public funds. According to the Empire's law, this move can be used on criminals unconditionally. In other words, it was they who should go to jail. It should be the two of them who should go to jail. 况且, corruption is 10 years of forced labor. They probably won't be able to get out until they die. However, they were once the male lead's comrades in arms. He still thoughtfully chose a better future, choosing a better future for them. As soon as he finished speaking, a luxurious purple carriage suddenly stopped in front of them, and a coquettish man got off. He was the deputy of the young leader of the largest gang. Due to his extreme dual personality, he is respected as the crazy joker, and the clown was called by the male lead. It turned out that he had expected that Hongmao had spent all the money, so in order to get back what belongs to him, so he called the clown over. He planned to sell the couple to the gang as slaves, and then use the money to make up for his losses. Hearing this, Hongmao and Lao were instantly confused. In response, the male protagonist kindly explained it to them. In a harsh mining environment, the survival rate of prisoners is only 2%. In contrast, being a slave who might be bought by a kind master might have a better chance of survival. Ignoring the desperate expressions of the man and woman, the clown estimated their price at 6 million fei. although it was indeed a bit less. But the church has been cracking down recently and banned all luxury trade. If the clown bought a slave at a high price at this time, he would have offended the church for nothing. Seeing the man sighed helplessly, the clown thought he had figured it out, but he didn't expect. The male lead raised the price to 11 million the next second, and while the clown was still in a daze, he raised the price to 15 million in one go. The reason why the male protagonist does business like this actually has the confidence. He will publicize that the clown bought the dog couple for 30 million. In this way, at this time, the clown, known for his good taste, bought the slaves at a high price, would definitely attract the attention of the rich class. And the dog man and woman are still young and good looking. With this gimmick, the clown can sell them for at least 90 million. In this way, both of them can make a lot of money. At this time, the clown was also shocked by the bold speech of the male lead. He even thought, directly pulled the male protagonist into the gang as a cadre. Then, after warning the surrounding down-and-out adventurers, the Joker directly paid the deposit to the male lead. Seeing that the situation was settled, the cowardly yellow-haired man quickly asked Vault for help. But seeing his helpless look, Huang Mao completely broke down. He cursed Valdar as a useless person. He can't be used at critical moments. He is just like a dog that has never been trained. It's useless if he doesn't die. In the rage of the yellow-haired man's incompetence, the matter came to an end. The next day, Warda, defeated by reality, decided to go home to farm. Although the male lead tried to persuade him, but unfortunately, Valda had made up his mind. Looking at the back of the male lead leaving, Warda didn't know if he was affectionate. After all, for so long, Huang Mao really liked the male lead. But unfortunately, what the male lead pursued was different from everyone else. Even if everything starts from scratch, in his opinion, it's like a snake shedding its skin, which is a necessary process. The man just casually posted a recruitment commission. But the next day, a girl with monster talent came for an interview. Ordinary C-class explorers had no chance of resistance in his hands. But before the girl came to the tavern, the male lead thought the newly released recruitment was hopeless, because explorers with sufficient levels and good skills usually have joined a team or a war group. Even Wolf also thought that the male lead couldn't find anyone. He stayed by the male lead's side all day, just wanted to recruit him to join his war group. Wolf is the captain of the Purple Lightning Wolf Regiment. Each member has excellent strength. In C-class, it is one of the best in the C-class team. But for the male protagonist, it was impossible for him to let anyone else command, unless he becomes the captain of the Purple Lightning Wolf. Captain Wolf was dumbfounded when he heard this. However, what he didn't expect was that his team members were all traitors. They all agreed to the condition of changing the captain. But the male lead was just talking. And at this moment, a voice suddenly appeared from behind, which immediately aroused everyone's vigilance, because no one noticed the girl approaching. Then they learned that she wanted to join the team, and a C-level scout. The male lead became interested, because the most regrettable thing for him before was that there was no scout in the team. The action will be much safer with scouts. However, when the male lead asked him why he wanted to be an explorer, but he didn't expect that, Genie said he was not interested in being an explorer. He was only interested in the grandson of the undying demon, which is the male lead, because his grandfather once fought against the immortal demon. His right hand was cut off on the spot. The male lead thought he was here for revenge, but he didn't expect that Kini would change his tone. He doesn't care about the feud between the elders. He was just curious. The grandson of the once strongest explorer, what he looks like now. After all, both his grandfather and the male lead's grandfather have both passed away. The male lead didn't expect Genie to be so easygoing. But at the same time, it also made him curious about who his grandpa was. But when they heard it was Yargo, everyone present couldn't calm down, because this is the name of the strongest killer. It is said that as long as someone commissions, he could kill anyone no matter who they were. Moreover, he was the first leader of the assassin's cult. However, the short-haired man next to him felt a bit upset. He just thought that Genie was talking nonsense. After all, this tavern gathers high-quality explorers, is not a place for a bragging girl to come. However, at this moment, Kini suddenly asked the male lead how the status of explorers is determined. After getting the answer that strength determines everything, he stopped pretending and said he would solve it himself. Monkey came back soon. Seeing that Kini was so powerful, the male protagonist immediately hired her. However, hearing this, Kini only felt hungry at the moment. Seeing this, the male lead had to treat him to a meal. What surprised the male lead was that he only ordered a plain fried bun. Genie ate it with great relish. It's hard to imagine that he is the grandson of the best killer. However, Genie didn't care about these. He fell in love with the male lead at first sight, because of his eyes, showed a ruthless look to achieve his goals. His grandfather once said that one must not get involved with people related to the undying ghost, because he would never win in a head-on challenge. But he had long forgotten this. But now, just seeing the male lead's eyes, it made him subconsciously recall what his grandfather said. Originally, under his grandfather's guidance, he planned to become an excellent assassin. Although he hadn't been promoted to level B, he was already an excellent assassin. But in the assassin's test, he defeated the examiner with absolute strength. He planned to follow his grandfather's teachings and kill him. But the leader of this area stopped him and seemed to dislike the way he handled things. So he was not allowed to join the Assassin's Order. In the past, the Assassin's Order has always been an independent secret organization. It will be incorporated into the Empire recently. Compared to the shady assassination, in the future the cult will gradually focus on espionage activities and become a legally recognized organization. Hearing this, the male protagonist was also shocked. He didn't expect Genie would tell him such explosive information. However, Genie is also a natural idiot, and she didn't know the seriousness of the matter. She just said that if someone would attack him, as his elder sister, she would stand up for him. After all, she was 5 years older than him. She naturally became the elder sister. But these are not important to the male lead. The urgent thing is, he wanted to test Genie's talent. If she can adapt to the bonus effect of her auxiliary ability, because although she can temporarily enhance others' attributes, but it requires the other person's physical habits. Just like his previous teammate, it took 15 days to use it freely, so he needs to do some experiments. So the task given to Genie by the male lead is to catch the mutant hares in the forest, because the results she showed will affect the future activities of their team. Genie was very confident in her strength. After agreeing without hesitation, the male lead immediately gave her some buffs. The effect is to enhance all of her abilities. In an instant she felt much lighter, and the power kept emerging from his body. And after the male lead announced the start, he immediately used his power. The request from the male lead is, catch one within 10 seconds to pass. Seeing this number, the male lead was also shocked, because only 8.6 seconds have passed. For the first time to touch the gain effect, she could adapt to this extent. Genie is really a genius. So there is no need to continue the experiment now, but can complete this commission first. Genie originally thought that she was going to hunt monsters in the abyss, but the male lead only asked her to deal with some thieves, because in the male lead's opinion, this task was the first job for Genie, was the most suitable. After taking a day's carriage ride, they planned to find a hotel to rest first, but they found that all the hotels were full. Finally, they found a hotel, but there was only one room left. The male lead planned to sleep on the floor and let Genie sleep on the bed. But unexpectedly, Genie was not happy. After all, the bed was so big. Why not sleep together? And as his elder sister, she would definitely take good care of her younger brother, the helpless and shy male lead. He could only take a shower to cool down. When the man came out of the shower, he suddenly found that Kini was staring at him. Seeing that he was a little confused, Kini said that the male lead's body was well trained, perfect like a wild beast. But it's a pity. To build this body, the male lead has made unimaginable efforts. No matter how hard the male lead exercised, he still can't compare to a professional warrior. Efforts can never beat natural talent. If the male lead's profession was a warrior like his grandfather, He might really become the most powerful explorer. Hearing this, the male lead was silent. He just asked Jeannie to close her eyes. And then he snapped his fingers and hit him. This is the punishment for meddling too much. When night came, the male lead, lying alone on the ground, fell into deep thought. Of course, he knew what Ginny said, but as long as there is a chance, he will definitely become the strongest person on top of the world. This is definitely the most ruthless male lead I've ever seen. Just because the employer didn't want to pay and poisoned his wine, he in front of the employer's daughter, he stabbed his right eye with his own hand. And you know that, not long ago, the employer's daughter was actually the hero's fan. The reason why the male lead is so cruel, it started when he accepted the mission and came to this village. According to the village chief, there are about 20 thieves nearby. Now the neighboring village has been attacked. Not only were their money robbed, but even all the young girls were taken away. Hearing this, the male lead didn't say much. He just confirmed the payment with the village chief. The deposit is 200,000, and another 300,000 after the job. Perhaps the situation was urgent. Seeing the village chief said nothing, he paid the deposit of 200,000 yuan. Although the male lead felt a little strange, he didn't think much of it. He immediately took Kini and rushed to the bandit stronghold. But at this moment, the village chief's daughter suddenly found the male lead. She came to see him off. Since the last time they parted, she had been keeping the bamboo dragonfly given by him. Although a little shy, he was still bold enough. She expressed her love to the male lead. And seeing the girls fleeing back, the male lead obviously enjoyed it. Soon, the two arrived at the bandit's stronghold. But strangely, the number of targets was over 40. Obviously, the information provided by the village chief was not accurate. And what's worse, the leader of the thieves is not a simple person. The male lead recognized. The other party was the wanted criminal Razor with a bounty of 2 million. As a B-class scout Razor, whose famous skill is Luan Bo, can detect nearby enemies. So the male lead decides to split up with Ginny. Ginny will use her breath elimination skill to infiltrate first, while the male lead uses Mind Link nearby to remotely command her. Once Ginny reaches the designated location, the male lead's plan can be implemented. After killing the leader, the other minions will be easy to deal with. Originally, he just wanted, before he arrives, to just disturb the thieves a little bit. But he didn't expect that Genie would start killing directly. When he arrived, the other side had already killed more than a dozen. But because of this, the remaining number was much easier for him. A few fireballs later, he killed most of them again. There was no suspense next. After a massacre, the male protagonist quickly handed over the Razor's head. But before that, the village chief wanted to invite the two of them to dinner. This is his wife and daughter, which was carefully prepared for the male lead. During the meal, the village chief mentioned that his daughter's function is to see, and as the girl's little fan of the male lead, wanted to be an excellent explorer. The male protagonist didn't hide anything. Instead, he told her various ways to become an explorer, and told her one by one. Hearing this, the girl became more and more eager to be an explorer, and even hoped to join the male protagonist's team in the future. Of course, the male lead didn't refuse, provided that he must become strong enough, and he doesn't disappoint people like him in the future. However, just as the girl was looking forward to it, the village chief and his wife brought out the red wine they had treasured for years. It is said to be worth 100,000 fei. Seeing this, the male protagonist shook his glass, indicating that it was indeed a good wine, but as a guest he should enjoy it first, which was obviously impolite. He thought the first sip should be taken by the village chief. Hearing this, the village chief's face instantly turned ugly. He waved his hands repeatedly, saying he couldn't drink. That's strange. Since he can't drink, why would the village chief buy such expensive wine? Could this glass of wine actually be poisoned? However, the male lead has already made it clear. But the village chief still said he had no reason to poison anyone. However, for this despicable trick, the male lead also knew the result the other party wanted. That is, as long as he died, the village chief not only doesn't have to pay, but also take away their equipment and property. It's a win-win situation. Seeing that the village chief was still quibbling, The male lead directly pointed out the loophole he found. Firstly, the village chief, who lied about the number of thieves, who was also very particular about the reward, wouldn't be able to afford a 10,000 yuan wine for himself. Second, this bottle of wine is simply a cheap one. Just by the taste you can tell. It was a bottle that, and left for a while. With these 2 points, it can prove that what the village chief said before was bullshit. Of course, there is one last point, that when the village chief mentioned red wine, he unconsciously showed a murderous look. Such a poor acting. Even Ginny, who is naturally naive, has noticed it. Seeing that things had come to this, the village chief also gave up, saying that the male lead was slandering without evidence. Seeing that the other party was still stubborn, the male lead had to ask him to drink this glass of red wine first. But this statement instantly made the village chief angry, and immediately scolded, telling the male lead to get out of the house. However, the male lead was not used to him. He directly used his real soul-breaking skill, forcing the village chief to tell the truth. Hearing what the male lead said, his daughter was the most incredulous. It turned out that she had been kept in the dark all along. It was the girl's shocked expression. The male protagonist raised his finger and inserted it into the village chief's right eye, although the village chief begged for mercy and pain. But the male lead had no intention of letting him go. If the village chief wants to survive, it's actually very simple. He had to hand over all the family's property. However, the village chief refused to agree. Hearing this, the man said, since the negotiation broke down, then what awaits the village chief? What awaits him will be endless darkness. And at this critical moment, the village chief suddenly shouted that they borrowed money. If they didn't repay on time, his whole family would die. How could the male protagonist care about him? After all, his motto is to repay 1,000 times. Since the village chief has the intention to kill him, what's the point of forgiveness now? However, when the male lead was about to continue, unexpectedly, the village chief's daughter took out all her property, a total of 820,000 fei, asking the male lead to spare her father. Normally, under normal circumstances, at this moment, the male lead not only wanted money, but also take his life. Seeing the girl's face, he softened his heart. But just as he was about to leave, although he lost a fangirl, he gained an enemy. But as long as he got the money, the male lead's mood is still very good. After all, he had already made up his mind. If he wants to be the strongest in the world, he must endure the pain that ordinary people cannot bear. Yanner. While the male lead was playing with Genie and going back, a flying airship suddenly flew over the sky, with the symbol of the third-class star of the 7 stars, the symbol of the Black Goat Dinner Battle Corps, and the so-called 7 stars, is the strongest war group recognized by the Emperor. 7 seats are occupied by 7 different war groups, and according to the ability and achievements of the regiment, the 7 stars are divided into different seats, from the weakest third-class star to the strongest first-class star. No matter which one it is, anyone living in that airship are the strongest explorers at the top of the world. The third-class star to the strongest first-class star. The man never dreamed that. The man never dreamed that he was just too beautiful. Not only did he have to deal with the hobo's approach, but also had to endure. But also endured the crazy teasing from the Black Silk Sister. After teaching Genie a lesson, the male protagonist took him to the Identification Room Guild. Currently, Genie has reached the limit of her current level. He must come here for an upgrade. Once the explorer meets the upgrade conditions, a mark will appear on their hands or chests. As a C-class wing, has 4 evolution directions, which are the Vanguard Assassin and the Torturer, and the Defender's Chaser and Wave. Considering the future team's comprehensiveness, the male lead suggested that Genie should consider to think about it. Hearing this, Genie was a little stunned, because she never thought to let others join this team. Then the male lead took her to the weapon store, and a bookstore that sells skill books, the housewife shopkeeper. To choose a suitable skill book for Genie, the male lead decided to go to another bookstore. Before leaving, the male lead specifically reminded that the budget is only 1 million fei. Don't buy anything messy. But in just 2.5 hours, Genie was satisfied and came back with a full load. He was holding a large doll, and a skill book worth 800,000 Fei. The skill effect is throwing objects, which halves the enemy's defense effectiveness. The teddy bear was 200,000 Fei. Compared to him, the male lead didn't buy anything. Jin. He was attracted to a skill book that could instantly kill Phantom Assassin, which costs 30 million Fei, which was far beyond his budget. Just then, a figure suddenly passed by. Seeing this, the male lead immediately said he would leave for a while. Then he followed the man's trail to the slum, and the two obviously already knew each other. It turns out that the man is an intelligence dealer Loki. His ability is to imitate, and can change his appearance at will. There is no place he cannot infiltrate. The information he brought today was the commission that the male lead had given him before, about the location of the imperial capital's murderer. The new companion the male lead was looking for is the puppet master who shocked the imperial capital. For some reason, the male lead seems to be very sure that the so-called murderer is actually innocent. After confirming the authenticity of the information, the male lead paid the reward for the commission. Before leaving, Loki offered an extra piece of information to the customer. There's some kind of bad drug in the neighborhood, which is highly addictive, and it has violent side effects. Originally, if such dangerous goods were circulated, the Luciano gang would not be indifferent. But the source of the distribution of dangerous goods was the people under this gang. This immediately reminded the male lead of something. The gangster Gambino faction manages the neighborhood, and recently, the former leader suddenly died, and his son took over the faction. Obviously, the tragedy in the slum had something to do with him. On the other hand, Jeannie was left in the restaurant by the male lead, is venting her anger by overeating, and this scene was also witnessed by the yellow-haired elf of the Purple Lightning Wolf. After hearing Jeannie's experience, the yellow-haired elf comforts her. Perhaps the male lead suddenly encountered something important. As he said, on his way back, he met a long-haired beggar. His appearance and hair color seemed very rare, and seemed to be a migrant from afar. On the way, the male protagonist gave him a silver coin, but unexpectedly, the blue-haired one stopped him, and asked him to keep the money he threw away. And she said that a beautiful lady like the male lead is not safe in this slum. Originally, it was just a kind reminder, but accurately stepped on the non-Jewish mine. After explaining his identity as a man, he said he didn't want the money that had been touched by a dirty person like Blue Cat. He didn't want to put it in his wallet. After that, the male lead turned around and left. However, Blue Cat still wanted to stop the male lead, but was kicked out by the male lead. After all, he didn't want be touched by a piece of trash that wasn't worth a silver coin. Looking at the high and mighty look of the male lead, Blue Cat couldn't help but recall someone's figure. He struggled to stand up, and held the knife with one hand, and posed in a fighting stance. Although he didn't want to fight, but being insulted to this extent, he would no longer swallow his anger. Looking at the posture of the blue-haired man, the male lead immediately recognized the other party was definitely not a simple person. Lan Mao asked the male lead to apologize, and it would be over. But the male lead wanted to test the blue-haired man's strength. So he not only refused to apologize, but instead he mocked him. Now the blue-haired man couldn't bear it anymore. He directly slashed with a drawn sword, although the attack was fast. But the male lead dodged it with a faster reaction. Then the two engaged in several rounds of confrontation. However, the male lead was trained by the immortal ghost since childhood, and has a lot of practical experience. So the blue-haired man was no match for the male lead. He was quickly thrown out by the male lead. Looking at the suddenly appeared dwarf, the male lead didn't understand what was going on. But seeing the dwarf use the ring in his hand to instantly subdue the blue cat, he realized that it was a dark item specifically for controlling slaves. That is to say, the dwarf and the blue cat were master and slave. After punishing the blue cat, the dwarf asked the identity of the male lead. But he didn't expect that he was just like the blue-haired man, mistaking the male protagonist for a lady, and intended to touch him. So the man kicked him. The male lead didn't correct his gender immediately, but quickly aimed the gun at the dwarf's chin. After some threats, the dwarf was a gangster from the south, because the incident of embezzlement of protection fees. So he fled to the imperial capital with his slaves. The male lead immediately guessed the dwarf's plan. Obviously, he was going to let the blue-haired man with great talent to participate in the underground fighting arena, to continue to be his money-making tool. And if he's lucky, he might continue to be a gangster here. So in the face of these questions asked by the male lead, the dwarf thought that the big sister was a relevant person over there. After getting the information he wanted, the male protagonist didn't plan to listen to him anymore. He directly confessed that he was just an ordinary explorer, and he was a man. "I want to run away. Isn't it? Isn't it?" Meanwhile, on the other side, Jeannie was still having afternoon tea with the yellow-haired elf. However, when she heard that the male protagonist and might be recruiting potential new members, Jeannie also made a secret decision. The couple prayed to the gods for a child. But tragedy happened at this moment. The husband was knocked out from behind. When he regained consciousness, all he saw was his wife, who kept apologizing to him. Soon the wife gave birth to a boy. That's right. The couple's wish was fulfilled in a twisted way. Hwangdoni Soga. Hwangdoni Soga. So what about Hwangdoni Ordinal Cooker? The once loving eyes now became extremely indifferent. This made the wife's guilt infinitely magnified. That night, she chose to kill herself. But this did not make her husband feel remorseful, but blamed everything on his son. No matter how the boy pleads, all he received was his father's malice. What's worse, one day when he woke up, the boy was already on a ship. Soon he realized that he was sold as a slave. The boy's guess was indeed correct. A short man took a fancy to his swordsmanship and intelligence, and paid a high price to buy the boy. For a period of time, the boy has been earning money for his master in the arena. Every time his master praised him, became his motivation to live. Only by constantly winning could he feel his value. Later, the dwarf stole the gang's money and fled to the capital. As a result, the male lead discovered Akun's swordsmanship talent. So now as long as he kills the dwarf, the male lead can easily obtain a superb swordsmanship talent. However, in the end he still let them go, because a talented man like Akun could have killed the useless master and gained his freedom. He never did. Therefore, he did not meet the requirements of the male lead. After all, what the male lead wants is not a weak dog, but a fierce wolf. But what the male lead didn't expect was that shortly after separating from the dwarf, he was caught by the local gangster Gambino. It turned out that the dwarf's former boss issued a wanted notice, and Gambino was not a good guy. He thought that if he handed over the dwarf too easily, it would be too boring. What's more, he is a dignified gang leader. Why should he help a rural gang? The dwarf immediately flattered him. Gambino was the most prestigious person in the gang, and he was willing to be his subordinate. Hearing this, Gambino was overjoyed. He didn't expect the dwarf to be so sensible. So he decided to show mercy, that is to skin them both, and make specimens and hand them over. Hearing this, the dwarf was dumbfounded. Akun also thought his life was about to come to an end. At this moment, the village chief, who was blinded in the right eye by the male lead, was brought up. He immediately blamed the male protagonist, saying that the male lead had taken his wife and daughter hostage and took all his belongings, and now he couldn't pay the debt to Gambino on time. What's worse, the male lead also insulted. Gambino's gang is a third-rate organization. Giving money to such a scumbag, it's better to be taken by him. Hearing this, Gambino believed the village chief's words. So he allowed the village chief to extend the repayment time. But at the same time, he must also take responsibility for breaking the contract. So the village chief had to cut off an arm as the price. Then Gambia turned his attention to Akun. Since his profession is a swordsman, then he should cut off the village chief's arm, and he could only use the crutches on the ground. But before that, he needs to take another pill to boost his energy. So they keep it lucky. And Akun's strength also made the madman change his mind. So at this moment, Akun changed from one person's dog, became another person's dog. Gambino's first task for him is the male lead. At night, information dealer Luoji asked the male lead out and told him that Gambino had issued a kill order on him. At this moment, footsteps came from behind. The man immediately guessed that Loki had betrayed him, which was a dereliction of duty for the intelligence dealer. But how could Loki not know? His life was threatened, and he also got money that he couldn't spend in his lifetime. So after this matter is over, run away to another country and start over. But how could the male lead let him go? What he didn't expect was that Loki didn't plan to leave here alive, because he didn't just betray the male lead, but also the dignity of the intelligence dealer. Just as he was willing to die, the male lead chose to spare his life, and also told Loki he didn't need to leave the capital because of this, because he would use this opportunity to kill Gambino, to help Loki regain his lost dignity. Then the male lead asked Loki to leave quickly, not to interfere with his fight. Then he drank a bottle of combat potion, which can enhance combat ability within 10 minutes. But he would also be affected by strong reaction force. At the same time, Akun who came to assassinate was also dumbfounded. He didn't expect the target to be the male lead. Thinking of the previous silver coin's favor, although he couldn't disobey his master's orders because of kindness, he also had the dignity of a swordsman. So he immediately said that he was a swordsman. Level C. The characteristic is to control the slash. Hearing this, left the male lead completely stunned. After all, the one who reveals his profession first will be at a disadvantage in the battle. So the male lead thought that the other party must want to have a fair fight with him, and he certainly couldn't take advantage of the situation. No monsters. It's starting, folks. Kirakoto. Hey, you, over this noise towards all confusion on demand. After a second-hand self-introduction, initiated the attack first. But unexpectedly, Akuan's speed was beyond imagination. After dodging the attack, the male lead came to mid-air. He then fired a fireball. Although he doesn't know the professional resistance of the swordsman, but as a physical class, he must not have fire resistance. Even if he can't end the battle, he could still deal fatal damage. But what the male lead didn't expect was that Akun not only didn't receive the damage from the explosion, but also expanded the surrounding air to create a vacuum. The male lead also knew that his profession was not suitable for combat, so he could only choose to use the lower 3 moves. This made Akun confused. He didn't expect the male lead to be so despicable. Hearing this, the male lead laughed on the spot. Now one can easily lose his life. In the battle, no matter what despicable means are used, only the one who survives is the winner. Then the male lead threw a flashbang. But just as the male lead was about to launch a fatal attack, Akun used the skill Secret Sword Annoyance and slashed countless times in the air, pushing the male lead back. When the male lead opened his eyes again, Akun had already held the sword in front of him. Without a doubt, the male lead lost the battle. Akun didn't kill him, but instead planned to spare his life. This action made the male lead very angry. He grabbed the blade of the sword, and then slowly stood up, and scolded Akun, because the male lead knew very well, if Akun let him go here, Gambino would never let him go. Hearing this, Akun was completely stunned. He didn't expect the male lead to be willing to give up his life, to let himself a slave live. However, when he was a little moved, several hidden weapons suddenly shot from the sky, and the person was Genie. It turned out that the male lead had already prepared. Before the battle started, he had already sent a distress signal through thinking, because from the beginning, he knew he couldn't beat a genius swordsman. And after watching the next battle, he was more convinced of the path he should take in the future. Both combatants are rare geniuses. In terms of close combat ability, Akun is stronger, which completely aroused Genie's desire to fight. The next second, the scout's signature acceleration skill appeared. Genie could even use it 5 times faster. Others only see after images, as if they were moving on air. But this couldn't hurt Akun. First, he used Sakura Slash to knock down all hidden weapons. Then he used his signature move, Cloud Still Water. When the user closes his eyes, can enhance the senses to the extreme within a certain range. Before, Akun was not affected by the flashbang, because of the effect of this skill. In fact, the male lead already understood. Fragile professions can't compete with geniuses no matter what. However, it made the male lead more convinced that he was right. That is to command the strongest people, and become the strongest in the world. At this moment, he did not provide Kimmy with any advice. Instead, he actively stopped the battle. He didn't want these two geniuses to die here. Before leaving, the male lead left a word, asking Akun to give it to Gambino. When Akun returned to Gambino's mansion, Gambino gave Akun a gift box, which contained the head of a dwarf. This was the price of his failed mission. Seeing this, Akun didn't react. He only promised Gambino he would definitely complete the task next time. However, before leaving Gambino, he promised Gambino. These words suddenly angered Gambino. He immediately ordered his men to find the male lead, and he must tear him apart. Of course, Gambino never thought that his decision to deal with the male lead would lead him to a complete and utter disaster. On the other hand, because of the death of his former master, Akun was still a little uneasy. What bothered him more was the male protagonist who fought against him last night was obviously the weakest functional mage, but he had the ability to fight against him. It must be the result of the male lead's crazy efforts. Even so, he knew that the male lead would never win against a fighter, but he didn't know why. Akun would subconsciously recall the male lead. In his eyes, exudes the confidence of a strong man all the time. Akun also doesn't understand why he cares so much. The gang leader is also a man who has been there. He said that Akun was obsessed with him. He admired his ability and wants to follow that person. After all, it's just like a man falling in love with another man. 2.5 hours later, Gambino personally led his men to trouble the male lead. He brought in A-level and AB-level subordinate. Even if he faced the entire Explorer's Tavern, they could easily kill them. And this is Gambino's arrogance. In his eyes, the male lead should kneel down and beg for mercy. But things didn't develop as he wished. The male lead was not panicked at all, but even started to provoke the other party with words. Even if Gambino took out a knife and was ready to do it, the male lead didn't plan to avoid it, because this is the exclusive tavern of the explorers. Others definitely won't let outsiders do whatever they want. After all, it's about the face of the explorers. Seeing this, Gambino quickly ordered his men to kill all the people who got in their way. As the leader of the Egyptian gang, he indeed has the ability. He could even kill everyone in an instant. But he didn't do that. Not to mention that he couldn't explain to the gang leaders. And their Gambino faction has long been under the national focus. If they kill explorers in public, they would be cleaned up by all parties. If he doesn't care about these, he will give another order. At that time, they will definitely obey the order. But Gambino doesn't have the courage. Seeing this, the male lead started mocking him again. He mocked Gambino for being a coward. Not only does he lack courage and strength, he only yells and screams all day, saying he is a mad dog, which is an insult to dogs. Seeing Gambino's unhappy face, the male lead asked him to stay calm. Otherwise his blood will flow faster in his body. After all, he just drank a bottle of poison wine. Zozo, go quickly. Doctor, I want to give Yixiali a strict autopsy. After Gambino ran away, the gang leader praised the actor's performance and drank the red wine at the same time. Because he had already seen that the male lead was bluffing, he didn't expose it, but asked him to leave the imperial capital immediately, or he would be killed on the spot next time. Unexpectedly, the male lead actually agreed to this proposal, and even said that his explorer career was over. From now on, he can only live with Genie and live a shameless retirement life. When they arrived outside the imperial capital, Genie immediately became excited. Everything that happened just now was exactly the same as what the male lead said. It turned out that everything was in the male lead's plan. Although leaving the imperial capital is true, but only for a week, because he wanted to use this time to find out something. A week passed quickly. On the night he returned to the imperial capital, Gambino led his men to block the male lead. But after 2.5 seconds, his men didn't respond. When Gambino turned around, he found that his subordinates' attitudes were wrong. No one responded to his orders. The male lead even mocked Gambil. He had lost his qualification to be the gang leader. Yuanlai. The gang members had long been fed up with him. They couldn't stand Gambino's cruel methods. And their original intention of joining the gang was because they admired the previous gang leader. But this second-generation boss not only bullied the weak, but he even sewed a child's head to a deer's head, and even sewed the child's head onto a deer's head. The male lead returned to the capital. He saw that the toy held by his younger brother was the one that belonged to the village chief's daughter. Obviously, she had met with an accident, and the reason why the male lead came here to show the results of his investigation this week. After leaving the imperial capital, he contacted Loki immediately, just as the male lead guessed. Gambino wasn't the real son of the former gang leader, but just because he was nostalgic for his old lover, so he left him. But all of this is not the most important, because what the male protagonist wanted to know is the cause of the former gang leader's death. He quickly found the doctor at that time, and the answer was not unexpected. The former gang leader was poisoned by Gambino. However, when it comes to this, the male lead has to thank Gambino. If he hadn't come to the tavern to make trouble before, the male lead didn't expect. He just casually threatened him and poisoned himself. The panicked expression on Gambino's face was like he had experienced it himself. Now Gambino was completely broken, and the gang leader also said at this time would no longer obey him. After all, this scumbag killed his most respected former gang leader. But thinking of the instructions of the former gang leader, the gang leader still decided to give him a chance to have a one-on-one duel with the male lead. Of course, he didn't let Gambino play in person. He asked him to choose one of his brothers to fight for him. Hearing this, Gambino was furious again. The dignified gang leader was actually threatened by his minions. And while he was furious and powerless, the crazy clown who sold slaves also came here. It turned out that the clown was called by the male lead, all of which were part of the male lead's plan. After all, Gambino disrupted the rules with drugs and occupied the clown's territory. This made the clown, who was in the same gang, the clown under him couldn't find to get rid of him. You shoot. Knowing this, the male protagonist took advantage of the situation. Let the clown preside over the duel as a witness, and if he wins, he can get 50 million Fey as a reward. Then, Gambino should stop dawdling and choose someone quickly, since his time is precious. Gambino was dumbfounded when he heard this. He didn't agree to fight the male lead one-on-one. Seeing this, the clown stopped pretending. He directly grabbed his ugly face and let him accept his fate. Now there are only two paths in front of him. If he wins, the male lead will not only let him go, and even recognize his leadership, but if he loses, he won't be polite. However, Gambino's men have many B-class and even A-class strongmen, but he finally chose a Kuan of C level. And this was also in the male lead's calculation, because after his background was exposed, the only person he could trust was only a Kun who signed the slave contract. Seeing this, Genie wants to apply to fight, but the male lead said he would handle it himself. This is very strange in Genie's view. After all, the male lead is just the weakest sorcerer. How could he possibly defeat a C-class swordsman? However, the male lead's expression was full of confidence. It was the look of a strong man, as if he had already won the battle. In a Kun's eyes, the other must have some kind of surefire strategy. But this did not make a Kun back down. Instead, it made him more expectant. This opponent he admired, what means he would use to win the duel. At the beginning of the battle, he found that the male lead didn't pull away, but instead actively approached and shot ice bombs. But he had already seen this move. For a moment, the arena was wrapped in huge ice cubes. They slashed each other in this narrow space. The next second, a Kun posed for a draw sword stance. The male lead recognized it as the skill Ninja Inzai. It's the prerequisite for the flash, greatly improving the speed and power of the slash. Once entering the attack range, he will be cut in half in an instant. But the male lead was not nervous at all, because he had already planted the seed of reversal. The next second he threw away his pistol and replaced it with a dagger. But before the final decision, Nanju suddenly told a Kun that it was cold, and remember to take care of yourself. This made the highly nervous A Kun momentarily confused. At this moment, the male lead launched a surprise attack. But unfortunately, A Kun still drew his sword in time and slashed the male lead's arm. Even if he would lose an arm, the male lead did not back down at all. He even used the muscle of his arm and pushed the sword away. Although Akun was a little surprised, he quickly adjusted his state. He swung his sword and used the one-hit kill. The ice shattered and also knocked the male lead away, and Akun took the opportunity to launch the final attack. However, with this strike, Akun panicked, because he didn't hit the male lead, but the frozen one. Its powerful force instantly froze it. It was also at this moment Akun once again saw the protagonist's foresight. Unexpectedly, all the foreshadowing from the beginning of the battle were all for this moment. Although the male lead won the duel with a small trick, but he was the weakest storyteller. So in a life and death duel, using any means is his creed. Then Genie bandaged the male lead's wound and sternly asked him not to act recklessly next time, because fighting is his duty. The male lead should be the commander behind. He wanted to say a few more words to the male lead, but the clown's appearance interrupted them. He first thanked for helping him defeat Gambino, and then asked Genie to leave, because he had something to talk to the male lead alone. After Genie left, the clown went straight to the point, invited him to join his gang, and even offered the leader position of Gambino's faction. The male lead had already refused once before, and this time the answer was the same. After all, his goal is to become one of the strongest. How could he be willing to be someone's subordinate now? Hearing this, the Joker seemed to have expected the answer. Then he told the male lead that he is a first-class judge of the Chiho faction. Although his combat effectiveness is not good, but he has many strange special skills. Then he took out the male lead's heart. Because the male lead rejected twice in a row, he has met the conditions for the clown's skill. This is a one-hit kill skill for humans. The reason why he can still live without a heart, it's because the skill transcends space and is connected to the male lead. But if they are more than 5 meters apart, or directly crush the heart, the male lead will die on the spot. This is the trump card of the Joker's negotiation with the male lead. After getting rid of Gambino and defeating Akun 1, the Joker realized that the male lead's excellence was unprecedented, and no one after him. So if he continues to ignore it, the male lead will one day become a disaster for the Lisignano gang. So, in order not to waste the non-Jewish unique talent, the Joker gave the male lead only one option, that is to drink J wine and join his gang. Hearing this, the male lead couldn't help laughing, because he admitted that the clown was right. One day he will stand at the top of all explorers. So if you want to kill him, do it now. Of course, the male lead's death would not be worthless, as long as he dies here now. As the leader of the direct gang of Luigi, his dignity will be exhausted, even if this is a world of the jungle. But he was sure that no one would be willing to obey a boss who takes advantage of others and has no prestige. These words made the Joker completely give up the idea of threatening. He returned the heart as if nothing had happened, and returned to his cynical look. But before leaving, he still issued a challenge to the male lead. Then, when he saw Gambino waiting to be dealt with, the clown couldn't help but lament the great difference between people. There are people who have their hearts pinched, who still retain their dignity, but also there are such scum who have no dignity at all. His punishment for Gambino was to cut off his limbs and make him the feed in the pig farm. The next day, the male lead got Akun's slave contract. Akun thought the new master was the male lead, but the man returned the contract to him directly. What the male lead wanted, not a watchdog who only looks at his master's face, but a ferocious wolf. Seeing this, Akun finally gathered courage. He expressed his true thoughts to the male lead. He hoped to join the male lead's team and become his right-hand man and help him reach the top of the world. In this way, after Akun joined, the three of them also faced the first practical abyss battle, with the two geniuses Akun and Jean and I, and the support of the male lead's wordsmith and command. The team's strength reached an unprecedented level. The three of them easily soloed the Great Ghost Abyss. However, when they delivered the final blow to the general, but Ginny took the lead, so the two quarreled over the credit for this. At this time the male lead stopped them, pointing out that Ginny was acting independently in battle, and must obey his orders absolutely, and obey his orders. As for Akun, he values the results too much, saying that the credit belongs to the team, rather than a single person. In terms of the first battle, they had already done a great job, and after this battle, he had a judgment that the team now has met the basic conditions for establishing a war group. So the male lead plans to create a war group. From then on, they can directly undertake the National Abyss Commissions, rather than this time undertaking small tasks of a certain war group. At this time, Akuan accidentally discovered the male lead has a strange pattern on his hand, which is the proof of meeting the class promotion. So the male protagonist made a decision that he would lead his strongest warband to reach the top of the world. So the next morning, the male protagonist went to the appraisal room guild. He was promoted to a B-class explorer, and he chose the strongest branch of the wordsmith, the tactician, and his various abilities have been greatly improved. But the application for the surefire war group was rejected by the inspector in person. This is very strange. If it's not about strength, his team was all talented. In the previous actual combat, they used their absolute strength. He soloed the Great Ghost Abyss. The Great Ghost Abyss that required several teams. As for the funds, the male lead not only paid a full 20 million Fey as a deposit, but also planned to rent a large stronghold as the base of the warband. But what the male lead didn't expect was that the entire world's situation had reached a precarious point. The demon who killed the male lead's grandfather appeared again. What's more surprising is that when humans sent strong men to hunt it down, the demon lord disappeared. Normally, the abyss demons attack humans is out of an irresistible instinct. This demon lord seems to have his own will, and also took away the weapon of the male protagonist's grandfather, because it has descended twice, so it is likely to become the new Lion King of fame. The so-called Lion King are the 10 great demons on the 13th layer of Abyss. Each has enough power to destroy the world. The last appearance of the Stawang was 40 years ago, which instantly destroyed 3 countries as soon as it appeared. In the end, it was the grandfather of the male lead's regiment. This is also the first time humans have defeated the Corpse King. However, according to the Empire's observation, a huge demon swamp suddenly emerged in the west. It is expected that in the next year, the Corpse King will come again. Humans have no way to stop all this from happening. According to the inspector, who has seen the power of the devil, even now, the Empire has 7 large war groups composed of 7 stars. He still can't assert that humans will definitely win. So what the Empire needs now is combat power. There is no spare energy and time to train fledgling teams like the male leads. Hearing this, the male lead didn't refute anything. He knew that what the inspector said was true. It's all because the team's strength is not enough. On the way to leave, Akun was still brooding over the failure of the team. But in the male lead's view, this is an opportunity before the Great Era, a chance for them to make a breakthrough. Until the male lead explained in detail, they realized that crisis also brings opportunity. After the 40 years crusade against the Silver-Scale Demon King, the Empire's civilization has achieved a leap forward. Humans used the heart of the Silver-Scale Demon Lord. They created an infinite water purification device. At the same time, the Demon Palace civilization also made great progress. The reason why explorers are regarded as heroes is also because of this, the unprecedented disaster, but also a blessing from God. At this moment, the male lead's goal changed. The original plan to become a 7-star war group within a year was brought forward to within half a year. In the next few months, he will accumulate fame and achievements by any means to make a name for himself. If he can be appointed as the commander of the Crusade team, it would be best. The male lead's undisguised ambition stunned his 2 teammates. They haven't even passed the application for the Legion, but the male lead didn't care about it, because he already has a quick way to gain fame and strength. The next day, the male lead met one of the top explorers, who is the vice captain of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. In this imperial capital, only 3 explorers can reach EX level. They are the captain of the 100 Ghosts Night Walk, the Golden Lion, the captain of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, Victor, and the one standing in front of the male lead, the one known as the Exquisite Sword Jike. And just yesterday, he alone destroyed the abyss of depth 12. He had heard about the male lead for a long time. Now he took the initiative to find the male lead, and her purpose is to win him over, to join his war group. Seeing this, the male lead didn't want to beat around the bush. He directly stated the other party's purpose, and he also said he would not submit to anyone. But in terms of Jaike's personality, as long as it is the man he wants, he will use any means. He will definitely get him. However, in front of the male lead, he was still too young. He didn't want to argue with Jaike too much, so he only made one condition. If he has to submit to someone, it must be the strongest person I recognize. There are 3 EX-level explorers in the Imperial capital. The captain of the Dragon Slayer team, Victor, is old. The remaining 2 are the Lion King Leo and Yu. This made Zeke hesitate. After all, if he and Leo had a serious duel, one of them will, and one of them would die, which was the result the male lead wanted. So he told him to come to him after he could do it. At this time, an oblivious explorer passed by. He immediately recognized the second-ranked Jaike in the capital. Hearing this, Jaike instantly ignited his anger. He and Leo were both EX-level explorers, but why did the other say he was the second? However, when the other party tried to explain, Jaike directly drew his sword and blasted him out. However, this scene was all seen by the male lead hiding in the dark. Where to get it? On the other hand, Jean and I is still hesitant about the promotion direction, so he specially asked the yellow-haired for actual combat training. But the position of defender obviously doesn't suit Jean and I. After just a few moves, he was defeated by the yellow-haired. Seeing this, the yellow-haired suggested that Jean and I choose assassin, because the job of a defender requires a cool head. The male lead is the best example. Someone called out from afar for the yellow-haired man. He is also an elf like the yellow-haired, and also an archer. They are senior and junior. After they got to know each other, the pink-haired elf introduced her team members to Ginny. There are 4 people. They are Spearman Came, Summoner Cough, and their captain of the Heavenly Wings Knight, Leon. The pink-haired elf saw that Jeannie was a new explorer, so she specially reminded him, "There's someone you mustn't get close to recently." No surprise, he was talking about the male lead. Rumor has it that this person sold his teammates as slaves and made a deal with the gang. In short, he is a villain with constant negative rumors. But this is very awkward. After all, he didn't know that Ginny was the male lead's teammate. Captain Leon interrupted him, saying that, "Don't judge a person's character based on rumors, especially not to feed this information to new fans." Originally, he just reminded her kindly, but when he heard the captain said that, he had to give up. But Ginny didn't pay much attention. After all, what the other party said was true. That night, the male lead found Loki, asking for the entire list of B-class teams. After a screening based on strength and popularity, the male lead targeted the pink-haired elf team, and seemed to be preparing to use them as stepping stones. The next morning, the male lead went to the prison, and his target was the famous murderer in the imperial capital Xiaogu. As a super rare puppet master, he was once hailed as a genius explorer, because combat and production classes cannot coexist, but only the rare puppet master can use both. Although the puppet master can control various humanoid weapons to fight, but in combination with Xiaoji's calm personality and a clear mind at all times, making him alone equivalent to a team. What people didn't expect was that Xiaogu chose to retire at the peak of his career, and then re-emerged as a doll maker. Although the result was not unexpected, he achieved unparalleled success, but an unexpected murder case completely reversed his fate, making him a murderer who was about to be executed. And the male lead's purpose is to get him out and make him a teammate. To prove his strength, the male lead just snapped his fingers. The guard respectfully brought him a cup of hot tea. Then the male lead told Xiaogu, "The guards in the entire prison obey him, so the preparations for releasing Xiaogu will be completed soon." Although this news made Xiaogu very happy, he still couldn't agree to be the male lead's teammate, because in his eyes, explorers are a group of violent and overconfident fools. But the male lead is different from those people, because in terms of negative reviews, the male lead is like a cunning and ruthless viper, always coaxing the prey and swallowing it in one bite. Before leaving, the male lead told Xiaoge that he would not give up. After all, he is as tenacious as a snake. Therefore, he would do anything to make Xiaoge his companion. Then the male lead took Gina and Akun to the Daquan bar of Class B explorers. However, as soon as the three of them entered, a head of the mechanism came to find fault. The man thought the male protagonist was a shy girl. After all, he has no scars on his face, and he was not worthy to be a man. Seeing that the other party dared to pretend in front of him, the male lead naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity, because before, he had already collected all the information of B-class explorers, so he knew the other's weakness very well. He directly said the name of the child born to the other party. As soon as he said this, Giganto immediately panicked. So if he really wanted to fight, he should be prepared to gamble everything. Hearing this, the Jigon head instantly backed down, and immediately turned around and fled the place. This made the male lead very satisfied. Immediately, he arrogantly asked everyone to remember him. Today, the male lead's purpose here is not just to show off, but deliberately waiting for the Knight of Heaven AB class team. At this time, the pink-haired elf saw Kini, so she took the initiative to say hello. This surprised the male lead. He didn't expect that they knew each other. Genie explained that he met her through the yellow-haired girl, and he had a very bad impression of the male lead. Hearing this, the male lead was simply satisfied. Doctor can cause you. Then the male lead took the initiative to reveal his identity. This made the pink-haired elf was so angry that he gritted his teeth, because she believed the rumors, believing that the male lead was a devil, and sell them. Hearing this, the male lead didn't plan to explain, and even deliberately provoked, saying that the price they were sold for was higher than he expected. This made the pink-haired girl ready to attack the male lead. Fortunately, Akun stopped him in time. Now the pink-haired girl was really pissed off. She doesn't understand why a scumbag like the male lead, why he still has such a loyal dog following him. Pink-haired girl insulting him. Akun didn't care. But if she insulted the male lead again, he would not hesitate to act. At this time, the captain of the pink-haired girl appeared. Nanju said that he was almost attacked by his men for no reason. Seeing that Pinky didn't deny it, Leon, the captain, promptly apologized for Pink-hair's behavior. The male lead said he didn't care much. After all, the other party was just an uneducated dog. How could he care about a dog? Hearing this, Leon was instantly angered. He asked the male lead to take back his words, because he was willing to apologize for Pink-hair's rudeness. But that doesn't mean the male lead can insult the pink-haired. Hearing this, the male lead immediately retorted, "Are you deliberately trying to turn this into a situation where both parties are at fault?" At this time, the pink-haired girl told Lei Weng the male lead was the rumored traitor who betrayed his teammates, so he couldn't help but take action. Hearing this, Lei Weng scoffed at the male lead's behavior. He thought the male lead was not qualified to be an explorer. After all, a guy like him who likes to insult others will surely be punished sooner or later. But he didn't know that this was exactly what he wanted. So he took the opportunity to mock Lei Weng. "Do you really think you are a god? Why do you think what you say is right? Could this be the arrogance of a B-class team?" Hearing this, Lei Weng angrily left the bar with his team. At this time, even Ginny and Akun both thought the male lead was going too far. But they didn't know it was all part of the male lead's plan. Then the male lead asked them to remember that in the world of explorers, either eat others or be eaten. But the one who is eaten is not necessarily the weak, but those who are overly proud. So the male lead wants to make Lei Weng's team to be his stepping stone. Meanwhile, the association hasn't decided yet who should be the commander-in-chief of the crusade. Mary, the granddaughter of the inspector, supports Leo the Lion King. After all, as the leader of the 100 Ghosts Night Walk, his ability is unquestionable, and even stronger than the former immortal ghost. However, just when Mary thought her grandfather would support the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex, however, her grandfather not only said he supported the male lead, but also proposed a bet with Mary. If Mary wins the bet, he would be the head of the family. If she loses, he would have to learn etiquette. After all, to be an excellent inspector, intellect and character are indispensable. On the other hand, the spearman came, saw a drunk brother on the roadside yearning for the future. He couldn't help but think of himself and Leon as children. Leon had already awakened as a swordsman, but because he was too kind and upright, he never fought back when he was bullied, until one day, Kame suggested they should go out and be explorers together. After all, one is a swordsman, and the other is a gunner. As long as they become strong enough, they could do the right thing. Whether it's to repel demons or protect everyone, there is nothing more right than these. Now Lei Weng's team can defeat the demons of Deep River 7. With this battle, they finally made a name for themselves. But also because Lei Weng was too outstanding, the original team name did not spread. Instead, they were called the Tianyi Knights. They were called the Knight of the Wings by the outside world. Soon the two arrived at a small bar. For Leon's unusual emotional outburst today, came to the conclusion that he was jealous. After all, a kid who just became an explorer appeared in the Daquan bar so soon. You know, they spent many years to reach the threshold. Spent many years. So it was inevitable that they would do impulsive things. Hearing this, Leon quickly completed his emotional self-consistency. Although he couldn't agree with the male lead's behavior, he couldn't deny that the male lead must have also made great efforts to get to this point. Kame took out the notice from the Explorer Association. They asked the strong teams to form a war group as soon as possible. As expected, everyone else received the same letter. However, unexpectedly, their application was rejected on the spot the next day. The reason is simple. The Reputation Corps was about to appear, so they didn't have time to train new members. Kame thought they could defeat the demon of Deep River 7. They should have no problem in terms of combat power. But this was also one of the reasons why the inspector refused. Since they defeated the demon of Deep River 7, but didn't immediately form a war band, it means they were too cautious, lacking the greed for pursuing higher goals. This answer made Kame very dissatisfied. If that was the case, then why did they send them a notice? But the inspector said that they had never sent such a letter before. Hearing this, they realized that they must have been fooled. However, Leon hoped to give them another chance. However, the inspector unexpectedly agreed to Leon's request. However, as a condition, they needed to take a test to hunt the king of magic eye baboons at depth 8. And there was a competitor in this test who was the same as them. Teams that had their application for a legion rejected, whoever kills the king of magic eye baboon first will be able to form a battle group. What they didn't expect was that their opponent was the male protagonist. Waiter store. Later, the inspector told the three, the task of this test is to see who can first defeat the Magic Eye Baboon King. However, it should be noted that this monster is very good at reading people's minds and has a cunning and cruel personality. During the test, both sides can interfere with each other, but killing is prohibited. Violation will lead to disqualification. The male lead made a seemingly insignificant request that both sides should not fight before the test, to ensure that both teams were in their best condition. The supervisor also agreed to this request. After all, this condition seemed fair to both sides. But he didn't know this was the key part of the male lead's plan. Due to the particularity of this test, the losing team must disband, and they are not allowed to team up with the same members. Violators will be disqualified as explorers. Both sides agreed to the condition without hesitation. The test was scheduled for noon 3 days later. Although the Sky Knight's strength is relatively strong, but Leon did not underestimate the male lead. But he said he would fight with all his strength. The male lead only said one thing in response, that his promotion direction is a tactician, and the characteristic of this position is having the ability to calculate the future almost. In the future he saw, Lion would fall to the ground and cry bitterly. But at this time, Lei Weng didn't pay much attention. He just thought it was the male lead bluffing. Soon 3 days later, both teams arrived at the scene with a perfect record. But just after the inspector announced the start of the test, the male lead's team actually ate lunch as if nothing happened. Leon was dumbfounded when he saw this, so he couldn't help but turn around and ask. Of course, the answer was the same as he saw. The male lead and his team were having lunch. After all, You can't win a battle on an empty stomach. Although he didn't know what the male lead's purpose was. In terms of the victory conditions, as long as the Sky Knight Regiment kills the Baboon King, kill the Baboon King. Even if the male lead has more strategies, it was all in vain. Of course, he didn't know that. The male lead had already prepared. After the Knights of Heaven entered the abyss, the impact of the plan had begun to emerge. Summoner Calf said that the male lead had come to him 3 days ago, asking him to betray the Sky Knight. Hearing this, pink-haired, and Came also said that the male lead had found them. In the past 3 days, except for Captain Lei Wang, the male lead had approached every member of the group, and he asked them to betray the group without exception. Of course, this seemed impossible to them. After all, the Angelic Knights have been together for years. The bond between them, which cannot be provoked by a few words. But they never thought that. The weakness the male lead targeted was the so-called bond. He knew that the Sky Knight was very strong. Leon is an excellent captain in the team. His combat ability is close to level A, but he is also very good at grasping the situation. What's more, he was born with the ability called Tianyi. Its flow speed is naturally faster than others. The speed of skill activation, but also can synchronize with thinking. The Knight of Wings is also famous for this ability, that it became famous. But the problem is that he is too excellent, resulting in his growth rate far exceeds that of the other 3 teammates. It wouldn't be a problem in normal times, but under the various plans of the male lead, this will become the most deadly weakness of the Knights, because he expected Leon would betray his 3 teammates. It turned out that Came and the others didn't tell the whole story. 3 days ago, the male lead took the initiative to find Came. At first, he proposed a rule to ban battles before the test, to plant the seeds of victory within 3 days. He first proposed that Came betray the Sky Knight, but was met with mocking laughter, and even thought the male lead was a bit naive. But the male lead didn't care too much. Instead, he continued to say that after betrayal, you will be free. For a moment, Came was silent. He had already known this, because the composition of the Sky Knight was very twisted. Leon's talent far exceeds that of his teammates. The reason why it can survive until now, it relies on the bond and trust between them. But if things go on like this, the problem will not be solved. As time goes by, Leon will only become stronger. Even so, Came still wants to support the captain. After all, they have been good brothers since childhood. As an older brother, taking care of his younger brother, but also a responsibility, so he refused in person. However, the male lead told him that if you don't betray, the one who would betray first would be Leon. Back to the present, the Angelic Knights have confronted the Magic Eye, the Baboon King, although he has cleared all the minions. But the King of Baboons can read minds. The Knights' formerly proud tacit tactics can't play a role. Plus, the Deep 8 King Baboon is not weak. The battle turned into a protracted one. Soon, the battle had lasted for an hour. Leon, who is good at observing the situation, soon found that the situation was gradually becoming unfavorable. He decided to break the situation with his own ability. He immediately used his wings to cast a big move. He intended to push the enemy into the air and pursue them. But he still underestimated the Baboon King. When he found that the enemy held countless stones, it was too late. After a barrage of attacks, the pink-haired elf had fallen to the ground, and his right hand was separated from his body. Seeing this, immediately ordered everyone to retreat. He alone covered the rear to buy time. Oh, later, they hid in Came's barrier, temporarily blocking the perception of the Baboon King. At the same time, Calf cured the pink-haired elf's right arm. Even though the injury was healed, the pink-haired elf's right hand couldn't continue to pull the bow. Now, the already unfavorable situation became even worse. Leon was also very clear about this. But Came said there was still hope of victory. That is, just like the evil dragon that defeated Deep 7 before. He would be the bait first. And then Lei Wing uses that move. The strongest skill that consumes all magic power. Sunwheel Laser. But how could Lei Wing not know that? The current situation is different from that time. Because the King Baboon has the ability to read minds. He can definitely see through this bait plan. So he knew that. Came said that with the awareness of death. However, Leon couldn't agree to his teammates' sacrifice. Compared to winning, he values his teammates' lives more. So he proposed to meet the male protagonist, and then join forces to defeat the Magic Eye Baboon King. Because after Lingjing thinking, the best choice. Of course, this also means that they, the Knights of Heaven, would admit defeat. However, these words deeply hurt the three teammates. Unexpectedly, what the male lead said before was right. If he hadn't chosen to betray, Leon would have betrayed them first. In the eyes of their teammates, though their strength and talent couldn't keep up with Leon's, they had made up their minds. Even if it means sacrificing their lives, they would unconditionally support Leon and the team. After all, the Angel Knight group had already become their home. Among them, came who grew up with Lei Wang as the worst. He was very puzzled why Lei Wang could easily make the decision to abandon the team. They knew that from the beginning, they chose to trust Leon unconditionally, but now they just encountered a setback. Leon has chosen to trust the enemy instead of them. So, out of his mind, came stabbed Lei Wang directly. At the critical moment, the male lead appeared at the right moment. Seeing the situation at the scene, the male lead knew that the plan had succeeded. Leon's loss of combat effectiveness was a pleasant surprise. And the rest only needs to defeat the Baboon King. Although their strength is not as good as the Knights of Wings, he has already figured out a strategy to defeat the king, while giving a Kuan the order to attack. Several buff skills have been activated. Soon, the King of Baboons noticed something was wrong. Every slash and skill of a Kuan were exactly the same as Leon's Tianyi. Attacks and thoughts came simultaneously. It turns out that the male lead had used the shared thinking to train. Now his skills mimics the attack pattern in the state of Tianyi. And that's not all. For this battle, he also spent money. He bought a bullet worth 10 million fire. One bullet penetrated the chest of the Baboon King. But this is far from over. To counter the King Baboon's mind-reading ability, the male lead also used the new skill of the tactician, ultra-fast thinking. He generated a large amount of useless information, making the Baboon King unable to read minds. Meanwhile, due to the shared skill of thinking, this effect can also be applied to Kini and Akun. But the male lead asked Kini to continue lurking. What he wants to do is to kill the target, but what the male lead didn't expect was, in order not to be disturbed by his own skill, he actually voluntarily pulled out his magic eye. As the male lead gave the order to act, while Genie was taking action, she also applied a 12 times speed buff to herself. Even if the Baboon King barely reacted, what he hit was just a spirit. This is the new skill Linghua that Genie gained after upgrading. Although it can only be used once within 24 hours, but its effect is very amazing. It can be immune to any physical attack within 3 seconds. The Baboon King that nearly wiped out the Sky Knight. It's as easy as killing a monster in the male lead's team. Zishi came finally realized that it was not a coincidence. Whether it's competing with their team for the ritual, or this scarred Baboon King, were all within the male lead's calculations. He was the one who asked the guild to prepare for the battle, and choosing the Baboon King as the target was also him. Even the person who sent the forged letter was also part of the male lead's plan. The only thing that he stabbed Lei Wang was unexpected, was a pleasant surprise. Haim doesn't understand the purpose of all the things the male lead did. Just to form a war group? The answer is no, because that's just one of the goals. But what he really wants? Recruit the talented Leon. Because in the eyes of the male lead, bonds can be destroyed, and teammates can be replaced. Not to mention the bond of the Sky Knight Order had already reached the brink of breaking up, and he just gave them a push, and made the Knights of the Sky fall apart in advance. After this battle, the male lead's team officially formed a legion. When other C-class teams heard the news, were extremely shocked. It's okay to secretly form a legion. Defeating the strongest B-class team is a bit exaggerated. As for the disbanded Sky Knight, Fen Mao, unable to bear the blow, decided to give up her identity as an explorer and go back home. Summoner Calf joined another team, Honglian and Menghua. Meanwhile, the male lead went to find Shuege and told him that he had formed a war group, in order to let him know that the prey he was after would never escape. On the other hand, The news of the disbandment of the Sky Knight Knights. Those clowns who have always disliked them immediately jumped out. They planned to take advantage of Leon's lack of teammates to vent their anger with violence. But they didn't know that such behavior was suicidal, because in the eyes of the male protagonist is already his own. After driving away the head of the organ, the male protagonist officially invited Lei Wang to get him. He even offered him the position of deputy commander. Of course, Leon chose to refuse. Knowing the other party's actions during this time, he has become an enemy. How could he join the enemy's team? But the male lead denied this. He laughed at Leon's naivety. In fact, even without his intervention, the Sky Knight Regiment would have disbanded for various reasons. The reason is simple. That is, his teammates couldn't keep up with him. These words deeply touched Leon's heart. In fact, he sees more clearly than anyone else. But he just couldn't accept the fact. Meanwhile, after reading the report, the yellow-haired supervisor thought the person supported by Grandpa was too despicable. But the old man thought that, thanks to this, they have become a more promising team. Leon can also fully utilize his innate talent. To assess the potential of the new Legion, the old man assigned them a new mission, Deep 9. The Abyss dominates death. The Ghost Wolf King of the Dead heard this. Huang Mao called the old man the real devil. After Leon joined, some rumors couldn't be stopped, which were all about betraying teammates and turning against enemies. However, unexpectedly, Kame actually appeared at this time and posed to attack the male lead. Leon immediately stopped him. So Kame directly turned his target to Lei Wang. However, just as Lei Wang was about to fight back, Kame laughed. With Lei Wang punching Kame down, the voice of Lei Wang is awesome spread around. Voice. It was evening. Everyone came to the war group base bought by the male lead. Such a large base. He only spent 20 million Fei. Everyone thought it was ridiculously cheap. But Lei Wang remembered that it used to be an execution ground. It's said that those who live there will be attacked by ghosts. It's an officially certified haunted house. But the male lead reassured them, because he has bought it. 3 million Fei worth of skill books. To expel undead. All evil spirits with levels lower than his own. And he can kill them instantly. In addition, the male lead also gave everyone a strange-shaped necklace. A snake with wings. Its meaning is the duality of good and evil. This will be the symbol of their warband snake. A few days passed in a flash. The male lead has begun to perform the task of the inspector. But this is the Abyss of Depth 9. Even with Leon joining them, the male lead and his friends were still in a tough fight. The Ghost Wolf King keeps summoning his minions, consuming their stamina. No matter how Nanju uses it, the exorcism of the undead is just useless, which can't pose a threat to the Wolf King. Retreating at this time is the best choice. But the male lead asked Genie and Akun to cover Lei Wang. Leon's task is to use his ultimate move, Sun Will Laser. He couldn't believe his ears. He knew that this move would consume all his magic power. Could they really bet everything on this move? But the male lead insisted that he follow the instructions. Although the joint attack of several people, they cleared a large number of minions. But the Ghost Wolf King, the leader, was unscathed. In the end, they could only choose to escape. And Leon thought they were cornered. After all, everyone has lost their combat effectiveness. What's worse, the Ghost Wolf King has found their hiding place. Unlike the panicked crowd, the male lead calmly started the countdown. This side Sorrow, Kirik Tanzania. It turned out that the male lead had already prepared. He used Genie's blood to create a colorless and odorless poison. As long as it is inhaled for a few minutes, the whole body will be paralyzed and unable to move. It's a poison specifically designed for high-level demons. Developed for high-level demons. Hearing this, the Wolf King finally understood. The escape of the male protagonist and others was all acting. 2. Was to lure him to this cave full of poisonous gas. Only then did Leon understand why the male lead asked him to use up all his magic power and do useless things. The countdown entered 42 seconds. The Wolf King still tried his best to struggle, but the reality is that he has been poisoned all over, and he had no strength to summon his minions. After successfully destroying the Ghost Wolf King of Abyss 9, the name of the male protagonist's legion will resound across the continent. But this is just the beginning for the male lead, because from this moment, it will be half a year. He will lead the Blue Snake and become one of the 7 stars at the top of Explorers. The explanation ends here, and you can submit your application for free. Step 1. Like this post. Step 2. Comment with some emojis. Step 3. Share with at least one friend. Step 4. Submit your application here. The link is in the messages section. Good luck, everyone.